Welcome to the Playing Books podcast. I am really excited to jump into this episode. The material we're discussing today, it really challenges one of the deepest, most foundational assumptions we have about human motivation.
Right.
That we're primarily driven by self-interest. The book we're exploring, it doesn't just suggest that being good is, virtuous. It proposes that being good is the single most practical thing you can do for your own health.
It completely upends the whole calculus of self-care. It really does. We're discussing the book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People, the exciting new research that proves the link between doing good and living a longer, healthier, happier life by Stephen Post and Jill Neimark.
That title is, it's an academic research paper and a self-help manifesto all rolled into one.
It really is.
And the central thesis from the authors that unselfish giving is the key to personal longevity and happiness. It sounds a bit like Sunday school wisdom at first.
It does.
But Stephen Post and Jill Neimark, they're using serious peer-reviewed science to back this all up.
And that is the crucial difference. This isn't just, philosophy or some kind of spiritual guidance. It's founded on the work of the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love, the IRUL. And it synthesizes over 500 significant scientific studies. It's a mountain of data.
Wow.
And the headline finding is so staggering, it's almost unbelievable.
Go on.
Generous behavior protects a person's overall health twice as much as the protective effect of taking aspirin against heart disease.
Wait, say that again? Twice as much as aspirin.
Twice as much.
A preventative measure that's been studied for decades. If I were skeptical, I'd have to ask, why isn't this common knowledge? Why isn't every doctor prescribing volunteerism?
Well, because the concept of unlimited love and giving, it often sits outside the traditional medical research model, But the data, it just doesn't lie. The core mission of this book, which we're fully dedicated to exploring in this podcast episode, is to shift our classical philosophical anchor. So instead of operating from Descartes' famous cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, the book urges us to embrace the scientific evidence for a far more benevolent reality. I love, therefore I am.
I love, therefore I am.
And we are going to look into the entirety of this book, its powerful stories, and all the practical lessons you can use to enhance your life starting today.
All right, let's start right there. With that scientific hook, the authors call it the longevity dividend.
Yes.
The correlation seems irrefutable. Generous behavior is associated with a reduced risk of illness, reduced mortality, and lower rates of depression. But the most stunning research, for me, centers on the time horizon of this protection.
Oh, it's the sheer durability of the impact. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that if a teenager engages in helping activities, volunteering, mentoring, offering serious social support, those actions lead to measurable physical health benefits 60 or 70 years later.
70 years later.
60. 70. Yes. We're talking about a habit established in high school acting as a protective barrier when that same individual is in their 80s.
So it's protective across the entire lifespan.
The entire lifespan.
That radically changes how we define a good foundation for a child. It's not just about education or sports. It's about establishing this outward-focused pattern of life that literally strengthens their future immune system.
And this protection seems dependent on the direction of the flow. Researchers, including Stephanie Brown, have studied this very carefully, and they found that the act of giving is significantly more powerful than the act of receiving in its ability to reduce mortality.
So it's better to give than to receive, literally.
Literally, from a health perspective. It's not just about social integration, being connected. It's about the feeling of agency and purpose you get from being the helper. The book underscores that receiving help is, of course, positive, but being the one who consistently offers support appears to reduce your own mortality more effectively.
But why? Why does the act of giving provide such a powerful physical shield? Is it purely psychological, or is there a genuine, observable biological mechanism at work here?
It seems to be a combination, and it's heavily rooted in stress reduction.
Yeah.
The concept centers around what the book calls the stress shield.
The stress shield.
Yeah. Research, particularly by Neil Krauss out of the University of Michigan, looked at hundreds of adults in social support networks. Krauss found that when individuals offered social support to others, it significantly reduced the anxiety they felt over their own economic stress.
Okay, so let me get this straight. If I am actively volunteering to help someone else organize their finances or, deal with their job loss, my own nagging financial worries take a backseat. Or at least they lose some of their toxic power.
Exactly. Giving shifts the focus from your own internal brooding and worry to external action. It replaces feelings of helplessness with a sense of self-esteem and agency. You feel effective. You feel needed. And this reduction in chronic destructive stress is the key mechanism that lengthens life. Chronic stress, as we all know, it just degrades the cardiovascular system. It suppresses the immune system. Altruism seems to act as a powerful circuit breaker for that degradation.
That sense of immediate payoff, that leads directly to the concept coined by Alan Lux, right? The helper's high.
Yes, the helper's high. And this isn't just a mood lift. It's a measurable physical phenomenon.
Really?
Absolutely. Lux observed that about half of all helpers reported a distinct, discernible high upon helping others. And the physical results are compelling. 43% of those surveyed reported feeling stronger or more energetic, and 13% noted experiencing fewer aches and pains, like a temporary analgesia.
Okay, so if we look at the neurobiology, this high suggests some kind of chemical release. But here's the critical question the authors have to address, right?
Go.
If we feel a rush of euphoria or a reduction in pain, doesn't that inherently make the act of giving at least partially self-interested and therefore not truly altruistic? Is the helper's high actually a selfish motivation?
That is the essential philosophical paradox, and the book's authors argue that it's a form of enlightened self-interest.
Enlightened self-interest. I like that.
They acknowledge the biological payoff, but they insist the primary intent remains focused on the welfare of the other person. The payoff, the high, the stress reduction, is the body's reward for fulfilling its hardwired need for connection and generative behavior. It's not necessarily the reason for the action.
That makes sense. The act of giving is likely turning off the body's destructive fight-or-flight response.
Exactly.
Which means we are naturally pushing aside those brooding negative emotions, rage, spite, envy, that we know contribute directly to illness.
Precisely. The book highlights the early evidence on this. Cultivating simple appreciation and gratitude is proven to lower stress hormones like cortisol. The effect is measurable even in complex interactions. We see that older adults who actively give massages to infants experience lower levels of stress hormones themselves.
Wow.
And while the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love continues to pinpoint the precise neurobiology, the evidence just overwhelmingly points to generous behavior as a system-wide calmative. It engages what they call the calm and connect axis, preparing the body for health and integration rather than defense and isolation.
The profound connection between purpose, giving, and finding calm in the middle of suffering it's beautifully captured in that story of the desert and the rose.
This is a deep metaphor, yeah. It's borrowed from the theologian Reverend Otis Moss Jr., referencing Isaiah. The desert shall rejoice and blossom like a rose.
So the desert is our suffering.
The desert represents the inevitable suffering, sickness, or relational sorrow that life imposes on all of us. The task is to be a pilgrim in that desert, not a tourist, and to plant a rose, a small, generative act of purpose or hope.
And the book shares the unforgettable example of Sister Leola McNair, a double amputee. Her personal desert was, immense, confined to a hospital bed, immense physical suffering.
And the author, feeling hesitant about what comfort he could possibly offer her, was stunned by her immediate focus. Sister McNair didn't dwell on her lost legs at all.
What did she say?
Instead, she confided, "I've been here in my bed thinking about all the wonderful things I'm going to do with my hands when I go home from the hospital." She had spent her life honing skills, sewing, knitting, baking, and her immediate plan was to get back home and use those skills to help other people. She even offered to bake the author a cake.
She planted a rose of humor and courage and clear purpose right in the face of her trauma.
And that purpose was her shield. She went home, lived independently on a small income, and was so busy, so actively engaged in bringing help and hope to others through her crafts and her cooking that the author notes nobody could feel sorry for her.
Her act of giving just left no room for pity.
Either from herself or from others. This story really crystallizes the challenge. The purpose of love isn't to erase the suffering, the desert, but to ensure that the suffering doesn't define us. And it raises that essential question for you, the listener. What rose can you plant in your own desert or in the desert of another person's life?
That shift from focusing on one's own pain to actively seeking to alleviate the pain of others is the transformative power of kindness, even when dealing with the most resistant people, like Mr. K in the hospital.
Mr. K was described in the book as cantankerous at best.
Chuckles, that's one way to put it.
He was demanding, he shouted, he swore, he often struck out at the hospital staff, And the staff, they felt burned out, demoralized. But a nurse, Nurse Pipe, she insisted on a counterintuitive approach. Treat him with absolute love and respect, regardless of his behavior.
Use kindness as the only available tool.
The only available tool.
This wasn't a quick fix, I imagine. It required immense patience and stamina.
It required 6 months of consistent, unwavering, loving care. Slowly, the wall began to crack. Mr. K started taking showers, combing his hair, dressing in street clothes, and then 6 months into this consistent effort, he walked unassisted to the nurse's station, stopped, and greeted Nurse Pipe by name.
That moment, that acknowledgement, must have felt like a massive victory.
It was a profound transformation, not just for Mr. K, but for the staff and especially for Nurse Pipe. She realized that caring for someone when they are most unlovable is often the most humbling and blessing experience for the giver. That selfless, unrelenting attention, that love, it remade the man, and it provided the staff with this undeniable sense of meaningful purpose.
It demonstrates that kindness isn't just transactional.
Not at all. It's deeply spiritually transformative for those who practice it.
The book effectively structures this transformation by moving beyond the question of why we should give to the practical question of how and where we practice it. The authors map the geography of love across 4 distinct domains.
And this framework is brilliant because it recognizes that generosity isn't monolithic, We express love differently based on the context. And by defining these 4 domains, the book connects areas of life that academic research often studies in isolation.
Okay, so the first domain is family, the initial training ground.
Correct. This is where loyalty and love are often first tested, where we learn commitment, and where our sense of self is first rooted. Family provides those foundational bonds of connection.
The second domain is friends, the voluntary network.
Friends are crucial because they're chosen. And surprisingly, research suggests that the friendship domain is potentially more crucial for psychological well-being than family relationships, especially as we get older.
Really? More crucial?
In some studies, yes. Since friends are voluntary, they're often selected precisely because they support and nourish our psychological needs.
Third, we move outward to community, which involves local helping activities.
This is where we engage in civic life, volunteering at a school, participating in a local religious organization, serving neighbors. It's where our generosity takes on a larger, more tangible public role.
And finally, the broadest domain, humanity, the anonymous recipients of our kindness.
This embodies the highest form of altruism. It touches on Gandhi's powerful quote, "Humanity is an ocean. If a few drops of the ocean are dirty, the ocean does not become dirty." This is where we act purely out of connection to the shared human experience, extending love to strangers we may never meet again.
The story of Catherine Myers and Marvin, the blind homeless man, is a perfect illustration of seeing humanity.
Oh, absolutely. Catherine Myers was walking past Marvin, who was panhandling on Chicago's Magnificent Mile. She initially just dropped money and started to walk away.
As many of us would.
As most of us do. But something stopped her. She felt compelled to truly see him. So she sat down, and Marvin told her, "Don't call me homeless. I have a home, and it's in my heart." She watched as others turned away, missing the wisdom of this man. And she realized his outstretched hand wasn't just begging for money.
It was an invitation.
It was an invitation to connection. Take my hand, see me in my humanity, acknowledge me.
That shift in perspective, from seeing an object of pity to seeing an individual with wisdom, that must have transformed her life mission.
It absolutely did. That singular connection led her to devote her time to working with the homeless, transforming that moment of individual acknowledgement into a generalized mission focused on the humanity of all individuals, regardless of their circumstances.
And within these 4 domains, the authors identified 10 specific ways we express love, which they captured in their assessment tool, the Love and Longevity Scale.
Yes, and the scale is significant because it moves beyond these vague notions of just being nice. It defines specific, actionable components of a generous life. It was developed by top psychologists at the University of Miami and tested on a diverse group of hundreds of people.
So let's list those 10 forms of giving. These are the navigational tools for this journey. They are celebration, generativity, forgiveness, courage, humor, respect, compassion, loyalty, listening, and creativity.
And the scale serves a practical purpose. It helps you identify your innate strengths. The ways of giving that align with your personality. If you score high in humor, fantastic. But it also acts as a mirror, challenging you to practice the ways that don't come as naturally, promising profound rewards as you cultivate those dormant forms of generosity.
We'll begin our deep exploration with celebration, which the book defines as an active manifestation of gratitude.
Right. Celebration wells up directly from gratitude, which is a highly researched state proven to have massive health benefits. As the psychologist Abraham Maslow suggested, celebration is appreciating the basic goods of life with awe and wonder. It's gratitude in action.
And the health effects are immediate and measurable. Long-term studies on individuals, even those with chronic illnesses, who kept gratitude journals for just a few weeks, were happier, more optimistic, they slept better, and felt more connected.
And this creates a positive feedback loop, or what the book calls a reciprocal circle of love. Research shows that one act of gratitude encourages another, fostering enduring relationships. Celebration also fundamentally shifts our focus away from fear.
How cool.
The book recounts how survivors of Hurricane Andrew, even after losing their homes, overwhelmingly focused their appreciation on what they hadn't lost, their loved ones, their memories. This shift from fear to faith is chemically activating in the brain, encouraging positive feelings that bypass negative reasoning.
The book emphasizes setting rituals to make celebration a habit.
Yes, rituals provide structure for meaning. This can be as simple as saying grace or establishing a daily habit of reading traditional wisdom that emphasizes love and connection. The authors highlight the work of P'Turam Sorkin, the founder of Harvard's Center for Creative Altruism, as a source of wisdom that, when you reflect on it regularly, can instill a daily ritual of celebration.
And part of that ritual involves benevolent intentions toward others, letting them know you care, not out of duty, but out of genuine love. This is the concept of the celebration visit.
The celebration visit is such a powerful, intentional act. You write a heartfelt letter detailing the unique qualities of someone close to you, their loyalty, their courage, their unique sense of humor. Then, and this is the crucial part, you set aside a time to read it aloud to them.
Oh, wow.
This dedicated act of celebration is a profound gift, affirming the miracle of their existence in your life.
Maggie Smith's story perfectly illustrates how a personal moment of gratitude can just explode into a massive communal celebration.
Yes. Maggie, after her husband received a clean bill of health following a malignant melanoma diagnosis, felt their celebration needed to be huge and meaningful. So she decided to donate bone marrow. She learned she was a match for a 12-year-old boy named Michael suffering from leukemia, and she committed fully. She said, "This is what I'll do to celebrate."
So her act of giving Michael a second chance at life resulted in this unexpected communal outpouring directed back at her.
Exactly. On the one-year anniversary of Michael's successful transplant, his family, friends, neighbors, even his basketball coach, 60 people in total met Maggie at the airport, all wearing matching T-shirts to celebrate her. She realized the ripple effect of her generosity.
Right.
Her single act of celebrating her husband's life had resulted in an explosion of love that embraced an entire community. That's the definition of a reciprocal circle of love in action.
Moving from celebration, we now look at generativity, the selfless nurturing required to pass on the torch of love.
Generativity is Erik Erikson's term for selfless nurturing. It's typically focused on empowering future generations or those who can't help themselves. It's the essential realization that life is about more than personal accumulation. It's about ensuring others have the resources and capabilities to flourish.
The classic teaching. Don't just give a fish, teach a person to fish.
That's it, exactly. And the ultimate example of generative love cited in the book is Jean Vanier and the L'Arche communities.
Tell us about that.
Vanier, an intellectual and former military officer, chose to abandon a traditional career path 40 years ago to invite two intellectually disabled men out of institutions and into his home.
Wow.
This single act of radical acceptance blossomed into the International Federation of L'Arche Communities, where assistants and disabled individuals live together in shared life. Vanier recognized that in caring for the vulnerable, he was taught the truest meaning of what it means to be human, that the only answer to life is to love each other.
The transformation of Erik, the blind, deaf, nonverbal 16-year-old, highlights the patience required in this form of giving.
Erik arrived at L'Arche filled with rage and anguish after being abandoned in a psychiatric hospital. Vanier and the assistants consistently dedicated themselves to bathing him, feeding him, just sitting with him. Through unwavering, consistent love, Erik grew peaceful and began to manifest his own unique gifts.
He taught
the staff gentleness, attentiveness, and patience. Generativity is about recognizing the inherent worth and potential in everyone, even when that potential is deeply buried.
And scientifically, this selfless nurturing protects the giver for decades.
The evidence is robust. Highly generative teens, those focused on nurturing others and their communities, live significantly longer, happier lives. We're talking about protection that spans 50 years or more.
50 years.
It is proof that establishing patterns of outward-focused behavior in youth is a major preventative health intervention.
There's a fascinating wrinkle in the research regarding the gender divide in generative behavior among young people.
Yes, it's a complex finding that requires careful interpretation. Preliminary studies suggest that boys benefit markedly from giving. They experience increased self-esteem and happiness. Girls, however, who tend to be more naturally giving and nurturing, they don't necessarily get that same boost in happiness. But they do suffer depression and anxiety if they suddenly stop giving.
So for boys, generativity is a powerful additive that enhances self-esteem. For girls, it's often already a baseline expectation, and its absence causes harm.
Precisely. This suggests that interventions need to be nuanced. For boys, a generative intervention might be more task-oriented, teaching them specific skills to use in helping. For girls, the focus needs to be on ensuring their giving is seen, valued, and appreciated, broadening their sense of being an agent of goodness in a way that goes beyond traditional societal expectations.
How does the book suggest we practically apply generativity in our lives?
A powerful suggestion is to actively audit your life goals. Write them down and make sure at least 2 or 3 are purely generative goals, like becoming a mentor, teaching English to immigrants, supporting a local youth group. The book presents a profound paradox here.
Which is?
Give what you need.
That seems counterintuitive. If I need recognition, how do I give recognition?
Cass Forkin's story is the perfect example. She felt burned out and longed for meaning and recognition for her hard work. So she started the Twilight Wish Foundation to grant wishes for isolated elderly individuals, requests as simple as a new blanket, a trip to a baseball game, or a marker for a grave. By giving wishes and recognition to others, she found it profoundly rewarded her own deep-seated need for meaning and connection. She gave others what she needed most, and it transformed her life from burnout to purpose.
The third way of giving is forgiveness, which the authors describe as the path to inner freedom.
Forgiveness is a mental health powerhouse. The scientific boosts are compelling. It reduces anger, and that reduction can be sustained for up to 9 months later. It significantly lowers depression, anxiety, and hostility. It's even been used successfully to treat combat veterans struggling with PTSD.
But the authors are very clear that we must first dispel the common and really damaging misconceptions about what forgiveness is not.
Absolutely essential. Forgiveness is not forgetting the injury. It is not condoning, excusing, or absolving the person of responsibility. And crucially, it is not automatic reconciliation, especially if continued contact threatens your emotional or physical safety.
Right.
Forgiveness is a personal, internal act of letting go of the bitterness and rumination that binds you to the pain.
The limits of a grudge are psychologically confining. While anger and rumination are natural, immediate coping techniques that give us a fleeting sense of power, the authors argue they ultimately become a life sentence of bitterness.
They do. The author shares a personal story about a colleague who stole his work. His initial reaction was protective anger, which was natural. But 3 months later, he decided to forgive the colleague. He told him the incident was water under the bridge, but, and this is key, he maintained professional boundaries. He said, "I don't think I can work with you again, but I'm happy to offer you a cup of coffee if we sit next to each other at a meeting."
That distinction is key. Forgiving the person while maintaining necessary boundaries. That is enlightened self-interest in this context.
Yes. The book emphasizes that forgiveness is a defined process, not a magical single act. Researchers propose a 3-phase approach: uncovering the depth of the injury and the pain it caused, the decision to move away from bitterness, and understanding.
Understanding sounds like the hardest part.
It is. It requires you to try to see the shared humanity of the person who hurt you, their own limitations, their stressors, their motivations, without excusing their actions.
If forgiving others is difficult, the book notes that forgiving ourselves is often the greatest challenge.
Oh, absolutely. The theologian Paul Tillich spoke powerfully about self-acceptance as the essential challenge of life. We all fall short of the goodness required of us. We need to cultivate unconditional love and acceptance for our own flawed selves. The book introduces the Tonglen Buddhist breathing meditation as a practice specifically designed for cultivating self-compassion.
Can you tell us more about the mechanics of Tonglen?
Tonglen involves a specific breathing practice. While breathing in, you visualize taking in the suffering of a particular person, or even the flawed part of yourself, visualizing it as dark, heavy smoke.
Okay.
While breathing out, you release something positive, light, peace, love, or healing to that person or that flawed self. By focusing on the pain of others, even the pain of the flawed you transform that suffering into healing energy, cultivating compassion for the fallible beings we all are.
The goal is simple then.
When you are in a state of self-forgiveness and compassion, you are chemically incapable of being in a vengeful or self-hating state.
Our next way of giving is courage and confrontation. Love often requires bravery, and the book expands the definition of courage beyond, just physical heroism.
The authors define 3 essential phases of bravery. First, physical courage, so acting in the face of bodily harm. Second, moral courage, doing what is right despite social or economic consequences like risking your job. And third, psychological courage, acting despite the fear of being destabilized or emotionally hurt. All 3 are prerequisites for a truly generous life.
And the underlying core trait here is hardiness, based on Salvatore Matti's research.
Yes, Matti studied hardy coping at Illinois Bell Telephone Company during a massive, devastating period of corporate upheaval where thousands of employees were fired.
A huge stressor.
Huge. And he found that only about 1/3 of employees thrived during this period. The hardy ones. These individuals were characterized by the 3 C's. Commitment, a belief in what they were doing. Control, the belief that they could influence outcomes rather than being helpless victims. And challenge, viewing stress and change not as threats, but as opportunities for growth.
This research proves that a courageous, hardy attitude acts as a genuine buffer against intense external stressors, both psychologically and physically.
It demonstrates that attitude is not passive. It's an active coping strategy. And a crucial application of this is moral confrontation, which the book calls carefrontation.
Carefrontation.
Confrontation tempered by genuine care. This is necessary when boundaries are crossed or injustice is observed. The goal is to engage the problem, not attack the person.
Dr. Robert Haney's work in the East Cleveland Jail Diversion Program provides an unforgettable lesson in effective carefrontation.
Haney was working with troubled youth when he encountered a young man named Dwayne. Dwayne was resistant, ignoring Haney, until he launched a racist attack calling Haney a bourgeois nigger from the suburbs.
Oh, and Haney.
Haney did not react with anger or personal defense. Instead, he confronted Dwayne with intellectual rigor. He said, "Dwayne, you look like an intelligent man. Let's analyze every word you just said. Give me the origin, define the terms, and use them in their proper context."
He didn't insult the man. He challenged the ideas and the laziness of the thought.
And that challenge, rooted in an intention to elevate Dwayne, led to genuine, lasting change. Dwayne graduated from the program and 6 months later admitted that the single most important lesson he learned was never to say something unless he truly understood what he meant by it.
Haney's carefrontation wasn't about winning.
It was about loving Dwayne enough to demand his intellectual and moral best.
The book reminds us that finding that courage requires articulating a life purpose, a moral compass's true north, which guides us when external pressure mounts.
Yes, and we can practice those hardy attitudes every day. Cultivate optimism, welcome change in small doses, and genuinely believe that you can influence the outcomes in your life, even if only slightly. That commitment to agency is the bedrock of moral courage.
Next, we have humor, which the authors describe as the fastest, fleetest form of giving.
Humor is a spiritual power that can change pain to joy in a millisecond. Because of its lightness, it can sneak past emotional defenses, allowing connection where heaviness would prohibit it. Laughter is physiologically incompatible with anguish. When you laugh, even briefly, your body lightens its burden.
And the science confirms its physiological benefits.
Dr. William F. Fry found that 100 laughs is the aerobic equivalent of 10 minutes of rowing. It's an honest-to-goodness respiratory fit. Laughter buffers against both stress and physical pain. But the book stresses a key neurological finding. Most of our daily laughter isn't in response to formal jokes.
Right.
It's in response to trivial, small comments in social settings. It is primarily a form of social healing, confirming warm connections and solidifying bonds.
The anecdote about the family using laughter to cope with the loss of their father is a beautiful illustration of humor as a resilient social mechanism.
Oh, yes. They had just buried their father. 2 sisters, driving separately, were both pulled over for speeding. The first sister, trying the sympathy ploy, told the officer they were driving from their father's funeral, and she got a ticket anyway.
No.
The second sister, pulled over shortly after, used the exact same story. But this was too much for the officer. He let her go, saying he couldn't give 2 people in the same family tickets on the same day after what they'd been through.
The sheer ridiculousness of the coincidence and the shared misfortune of the first sister turned the story into a source of immediate relief.
Exactly. They called relatives and recounted the tale, which brought the entire grieving extended family together in shared laughter. It was a moment of deep resilience, strengthening bonds, and easing the immediate intensity of loss. The practical lesson here is to actively cultivate your humor style, watch things that make you laugh, and remember that generous humor is never at anyone's expense. It lifts everyone up.
Our final way in this section is respect, which literally means to look again.
The Latin root, respectare, means to look deeply past our immediate shallow judgments. Respect allows love to breathe. It encompasses tolerance, civility, acceptance, and ultimately reverence. It is a powerful stress reducer, especially when we are confronted with people who challenge our views.
And the foundation of respect is tolerance.
Adam Seligman's Tolerance Project provided fascinating insights. They found that groups virtually at war, like some communities in Israel and Bosnia, could foster tolerance by studying shared religious texts, the Torah and the Quran. The key takeaway is honoring differences without dissolving necessary boundaries. Tolerance acknowledges that our differences constitute the rich tapestry of our communities.
And civility is the action of respect.
Civility is doing small things with great kindness. Emily Post emphasized that good manners are simply about making others comfortable. The book expands this to Emmanuel Levinas's definition of ethics as opening the door for others.
So it means treating every person you encounter,
The security guard, the service worker, the cable repairman, as someone with a meaningful history and an inherent dignity.
Yes. Moving to acceptance, the deeper embrace of respect.
Acceptance is affirming another person's fundamental choices, even when they conflict dramatically with your own values or desires. The authors, through their background in bioethics, use the example of informed consent in medicine.
And Jamie Talon's story about honoring her stepfather Jimmy's wish to die is a difficult but powerful example of acceptance.
Jimmy, facing a terminal illness, was coherent and firm in his decision. He did not want a tracheotomy to prolong his life. The medical staff wanted to move forward with the procedure, believing it was their duty to save him. But Jamie Talon honored her stepfather's wish to pass peacefully, on his own terms. She recognized that to truly respect someone means accepting their sovereignty over their own life, even when it involves immense grief for the giver.
This philosophical context is beautifully supported by Mary Doria Russell's idea that we live in the metaphorical Saturday in between.
That phrase suggests that we are never fully in control, and we can't possibly know the final outcome of any decision. What seems like a tragedy or bad luck today might turn out to be the catalyst for the best thing that ever happened to us. Acceptance recognizes this profound uncertainty. It's more joyful than mere tolerance because it incorporates celebration and trust in the other person's journey.
And finally, reverence, the most expansive form of respect.
Reverence is a state of awe or amazement over the sheer existence and uniqueness of another person. The authors call it vastness and accommodation, allowing another person's complex life to exist fully in its own glory. We are challenged to apply this transforming state to others, even those whose lives seem in tatters.
So how do we cultivate that?
The Dalai Lama, for example, radiates this buoyant mirth and reverence for all life. We can cultivate reverence through simple acts, listening to transcendent music, spending time in nature, or meditating on moments of awe in our own lives, and then extending that feeling of wow to the people around us.
We transition now to compassion, which is love's essential response to suffering.
Compassion is defined by the Latin paticum, which translates literally to suffer with. Neurobiologically, this is where we return to the core of the calm and connect axis. Compassion is the direct opposite of the fight-or-flight stress response. It's driven by the attachment hormone oxytocin. This system is necessary for group survival, communal healing, and flourishing.
The research on cultivating compassion, particularly Richard Davidson's study of Buddhist monks, provides concrete proof of neuroplasticity in action.
Davidson compared monks who had practiced loving kindness and compassion meditation for decades with novice students. The monks showed permanently heightened activity in the left prefrontal cortex, which is the brain seat of positive emotion and calm.
And lower activity in the right.
Simultaneously, yes. Lowered activity in the right prefrontal cortex, which is linked to anxiety and negative brooding. This demonstrates that years of daily compassionate practice literally remaps the brain. It aligns with the Buddhist promise that we can cultivate loving kindness into a permanent state.
The book also stresses that compassion is not just learned, it is hardwired, starting at birth with the mothering instinct.
That engrossment of the parent upon seeing their infant is instinctual. The book cites compelling research, including studies on pups, which showed that those licked and groomed frequently by their mothers displayed reduced stress hormones and enhanced learning later in life.
So compassionate care in infancy is crucial.
It helps infants develop healthy nervous and immune systems, providing lifelong resilience.
Given that compassion is so vital, the book offers a practical structure for cultivating it, the four-step Buddhist compassion meditation.
This meditation systematically expands the circle of love. Step 1 begins with the self, wishing yourself happiness and freedom from suffering. Step 2 expands to those like yourself, merging with their suffering and breathing out peace to them. Step 3 then ripples outward, to friends, protective strangers, and people you don't know who are hurting. And the final, ultimate step is offering love and peace to all creation, all sentient beings, using phrases like, may you be happy, may you find peace and joy.
That structured practice is key.
It moves compassion from a fleeting emotion to a deeply integrated habit.
Next, we explore loyalty, which is love across time-steadfast, covenant love.
Loyalty is cheesed in Judaism enduring through difficulties. The core value of commitment inherent in loyalty acts to diffuse our deepest existential anxieties. The book argues that we must commit to people long enough to discover their inevitable human imperfections and continue loving them anyway. Loyalty helps us weather the storms of life and the flaws of others.
George Vaillant's famous longitudinal study of inner-city men provided empirical evidence of loyalty's power in human happiness.
Vaillant found that for men whose lives began in poverty and difficulty, a loving, long-term marriage was the single greatest factor in their sustained happiness. The data is clear. Married people are less likely to die, and long-term commitment helps couples outlast their problems. A study cited in the book found that 80% of formerly unhappy spouses who stayed married were genuinely happy 5 years later.
80%.
Loyalty acts as a profound preservative.
The powerful, detailed story of Chester and Mildred Dilday's 7-decade marriage embodies this steadfast commitment through immense hardship.
Their story is legendary. They met during the Great Depression. Chester was so committed he walked 56 miles round trip every weekend for a year just to see Millie. Their loyalty continued through Chester's years away in the Marines, his injury, his selling their farm to pay for an operation, and their shared tragedy of losing their firstborn daughter, Patricia, at age 11.
They endured poverty, separation, illness, and the darkest loss a parent can face. What was their secret?
Their guiding philosophy was simple yet profound. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. They focused on realizing deep down their core love for one another, which gave them the willingness to overlook inconsistencies and flaws. Their unwavering loyalty was their mutual emotional and physical buffer against the relentless difficulties of life.
Loyalty shines perhaps brightest during acute trauma, as exemplified by George and Vivian Pennant.
George suffered catastrophic 3rd and 4th degree burns over 70% of his body in an accident. He was ashamed, in constant agony, and he lashed out violently at Vivian, telling her he hated himself and demanded she leave him.
And Vivian.
She refused. Her response was simple. He's the one. He's it. He's my one and only. She stayed, feeding him, caring for him, refusing to budge until his rage subsided.
That steadfast presence acts as a powerful therapeutic tool.
Ira Holzer's research on war veterans confirms this mechanism. Veterans suffering from severe PTSD experience significantly less trauma and a better chance at recovery if they had a secure, loving relationship, particularly with a spouse. That enduring, loyal love dissolves the hardness of despair and acts as a continuous healing agent.
And what about the surprising longevity effect of friendship loyalty?
This is one of the most remarkable findings cited in the book. A 10-year study of older adults, age 70 and above, found that a strong network of good friends was linked to increasing longevity by an astounding 22%.
22%.
And crucially, this effect was found to be more protective than the longevity benefit provided by close family relationships alone.
That brings us back to our earlier point about choice. Since friendships are voluntary, they are inherently chosen to support our psychological well-being, perhaps resulting in less obligation and more genuine connection?
Exactly. Friends often act as a voluntary buffer, providing essential psychological support, especially following the loss of a spouse or other family members. The quality and voluntary nature of that loyalty seem to translate directly into measurable health benefits.
Our 9th way of giving is listening, which the book calls the quiet gift of witnessing.
The need to be truly heard, understood, and acknowledged diminishes the terrifying solitude we all experience. Therapist Dan Gottlieb, a quadriplegic, credits his accident with forcing his world to become quieter, allowing him to listen to people's hearts, not just their words. He says the most generous question you can ask anyone is, what is it like to live inside your skin?
And the neurobiology confirms that this witnessing has a measurable physical impact through specialized mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons allow us to feel into empathia, what others experience. When we are genuinely listening, we are activating the same neural networks as the speaker. Greg Fricciane, a Harvard researcher, explains that empathic listening acts like a powerful drug. It reduces the speaker's stress response and gives their body a better chance to heal.
When a person feels truly heard,
Their nervous system quiets down, optimizing their physical resources for recovery and well-being. Yes.
listening is also a powerful tool for bridging differences and reducing prejudice, as shown by Arthur Aaron's research.
Aaron found that if you can facilitate a bonding experience with just one individual from an outgroup, someone from a different racial or ethnic background, it tends to increase your overall sympathy and admiration for that person's group as a whole. Empathic listening allows that powerful individual bond to form. And once that individual is integrated into your sense of self, you automatically extend care and positive regard to their entire community.
So the simple act of listening with full engagement is how we start to solve large-scale problems like prejudice.
It starts with one human conversation. The book suggests practical techniques like using Aaron's bonding questions, such as, given the choice of anyone in the world, whom would you want as a dinner guest, which facilitates self-disclosure. The ultimate technique is to practice listening with the whole self, reflecting the other person's feelings, and actively refraining from immediately talking about yourself.
No.
Avoid the dyadic monologue where two people are just waiting for their turn to speak.
Finally, we reach the 10th way of giving. Creativity.
Creativity is the most spontaneous and joyful expression of life, essential to human flourishing. The authors differentiate between little c, the personal, daily problem-solving creativity, like figuring out how to fix a broken shelf with minimal tools, and big C, the world-changing genius of a Gandhi or an Edison.
And true creativity must be both.
Novel and useful, yes.
What are the personal benefits of engaging in creative acts?
It is a strong predictor of self-actualization. It provides that state of flow, identified by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, where deep pleasure is found and effortlessness replaces struggle. In terms of health, it reduces symptoms like pain, depression, and anxiety in cancer patients. Art therapy provides a vital distraction and a sense of mastery and control over one's life that illness often strips away.
The powerful story of Rick Guidotti, the former fashion photographer, perfectly illustrates the intersection of creativity and compassion, what the authors term moral genius.
Guidotti was a successful high-fashion photographer who realized his artistic talent could serve a greater purpose. He created Positive Exposure, an organization dedicated to photographing people with genetic disorders to celebrate their difference in beauty. He abandoned his lucrative career, traveling cheaply, because this moral creativity seized his heart.
And the impact on the individuals he photographed was life-altering.
One young woman with Marfan syndrome saw his portrait of another boy with the condition and said, "I'm buying a bikini." A young man stated that while the hatred and abuse he experienced daily would likely continue, the hatred he felt for himself had disappeared. Guidotti's creative giving using art to shift perception is a profound example of how creativity can erase self-hatred and change public perception simultaneously.
Creativity can also scale up to massive social transformation.
Think of the moral genius of Millard Fuller founding Habitat for Humanity, mobilizing hundreds of thousands of volunteers to build homes for millions of people. Or Gandhi inventing Satyagraha, nonviolent resistance, which was a creative, novel approach to political and social struggle. These are acts of big C in the social realm, where the willingness to give sustains the devotion required for monumental change. The book even notes that creativity remains at the deepest core of human being, citing the continued artistic output of Willem de Kooning even as he suffered from dementia.
So this book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People, the exciting new research that proves the link between doing good and living a longer, healthier, happier life by Stephen Post and Jill Neimark, has guided us through the 4 domains: family, friends, community, and humanity, and the 10 specific ways we can express love. It provides overwhelming scientific evidence that giving is not a sacrificial duty, but a powerful form of enlightened self-interest.
The synthesis is clear. Giving reduces mortality, anxiety, and depression. Whether we trace the biological mechanism back to the reduction of stress hormones like cortisol, the firing of the neurological calm and connect axis, or the profound protective shield loyalty provides against trauma, living a generous life is the single most practical choice we can make for our own health and longevity. It is a gift you give yourself.
We have to remember the lesson contained in the author's story of the bus ride to Milesburg. The angry man with his frightened sons, consumed by his own rage, sitting next to the loving young man with Down syndrome, who kept asking, "Are we in Cleveland yet?"
The angry man, cognitively intact, chose isolation and anger and was left behind in his bitterness. The cognitively impaired young man, full of need but overflowing with love, was the source of great joy and thanks for the author. The ultimate reflection of that story is that it's never too late to begin this journey. The constant human question, "Are we there yet?" is answered by love. Love is for you, from you, and because of you. Just give it.
I am profoundly energized and, well, challenged by the breadth of the ideas presented in this book. And that is the challenge we extend to you, our listener, today.
Gandhi offered us a guiding thought. The difference between what we do and what we are capable of doing would suffice to solve most of the world's problems. We challenge you to let the book's ideas enhance your life now. Choose one way of love, perhaps practicing listening with a family member today, or committing to a small act of generativity in your community, and just focus on it. Make that small, deliberate change today.
If these stories and scientific findings have resonated with you and you wish to explore the entire framework presented in this comprehensive volume, we strongly encourage you to purchase the book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People. The exciting new research that proves the link between doing good and living a longer, healthier, happier life by Stephen Post and Jill Neimark.
You can also engage directly with the author, Stephen Post, on social media to learn more about the ongoing research into the power of unlimited love and the work of the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love.
Thank you so much for joining us for this extensive discussion and for letting us share the profound insights of this book with you. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, subscribe, and share the Playing Books podcast with friends and family. Until next time, keep reading and keep giving.